Good morning. It is Wednesday, February the 2nd, 2022. I'm Pearson Bowen. This is the CBC Morning Report. The Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association believes that with tourist figures continuing to improve, the visitor experience should be exceptional, and one area they want to see enhanced is at the airport. Rudy Grant, the Chief Executive Officer of the association, says they'll be calling on the government to make some changes pertaining to the travel protocols.
One of the persistent sources of concern continues to be the airport experience. Against this background, we will shortly be recommending to the Government of Barbados, through the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport, changes to the Barbados travel protocols in a manner that maintains our competitiveness while ensuring that health and safety are not compromised. The Barbados tourism industry is on the rebound, but it is still faced with many challenges and great uncertainty. The industry recovery must be assessed in a holistic manner that takes account of all the variables in this dynamic environment.
Some players in the fast food industry are being sandwiched by internal and external rising costs. And with patronage numbers still being limited owing to COVID-19, they say it's tough. Everett Eastman of Sky Mall told CBC News that labor, energy and sanitization costs are spiraling, but they cannot be controlled that easily because business operation standards must also remain high.
We have that. We have the latest in the rise in labor costs, which is warranted because, you know, with rising prices, that is warranted to make sure that the people who work for us are rewarded. We also have the high energy costs that we have to deal with. If we look at even the energy costs that have risen, the energy part of our bill has risen from about 20 cents to now nearly 35 cents, a big increase. And of course all the other things that go along with to keep the place at the right standard of hygiene and so forth. So it's all of these costs, and it's a double-edged sword because at the same time we have to restrict the numbers coming in that we can serve. There's a cost to running that whole hygiene and sanitary stuff. So we're impacted on both sides of the coin.
The CBC Morning Report continues in just a moment. Barbados has recorded another COVID-related death. The Ministry of Health and Wellness notes a 69-year-old woman passed away at the Harrison Point Isolation Facility as a result of the viral illness. The death brings the total number now to 281. Meanwhile, Barbados recorded 786 new COVID-19 cases on Monday. There were 2,954 tests carried out by the Best of Santos Public Health Lab that day. The new positives comprise 157 under the age of 18. The number of people in isolation facilities was 177, while 10,710 are at home isolation. Under the vaccination program, 158,705 people have received one dose, while 147,190 are fully vaccinated. The National Council on Aging in Belize says the elderly in that CARICOM state since the onset of the pandemic have lost their source of income, and limited physical activity has led to immobility challenges. Executive Director Excel Poot says her organization has been offering support.
What we have been trying to do and what we have been called to do a lot more often is capacity building sessions with families who have now become caregivers of older people where before they were not able to, or they were not the main caregiver. Well, because of this change in situation with COVID, what we find is that as older people became less active, they lost a lot of their independence and mobility, and they've had to be absorbed into families. So we've done capacity building sessions with families. We've also been looking at how to support Meals on Wheels programs and also pantry programs with older persons, locating people who are able to make donations to existing programs that go to assist older people. Food security is a big issue for elderly in our country. When you look at how the business world collapsed around the world, there were many older people who were involved in very, very micro enterprise, little mama pop shops. Maybe they sold ideals or cokes or something very small at home, and those things have collapsed. There were older people who maybe ran taxis but had a bout of COVID and are no longer able to do it. So they are not generating any income. Older women who might have been baking bread and bun to sell, and then there was nobody to buy bread and bun, or other people started doing it. And so what they were doing to supplement no longer exists. So really, how do we ensure that these older people have access to food, have access to programs, have access to social support, and also recognizing that almost all the social support programs that existed for older persons folded during COVID.
Denmark will scrap most of its pandemic restrictions this week as the country says COVID-19 is no longer a socially critical disease. Despite the surge in the Omicron variant, the high vaccination rate has prevented a large strain on the health system.
I think it's a bad move to lift all restrictions. I understand the population is tired and many are thrilled that all restrictions are being removed, but it gives a false sense of security. I think that could have been a more gradual reduction in lifting. I think Denmark in that sense is setting a bad precedent. It's basically politics over public health. They could have kept face masks on, at least in public transportation. I don't think many people would be complaining about that. So I do think it's a lot about the politics and being able to say, we were the first to do this. We were the government in power. But I think it's sending the wrong message to the population. So cases are higher than ever, and hospitalizations are actually going up, although the numbers in the intensive care units is not going up. So that's a good sign. But I mean, hospitalizations are going up, which is quite worrisome. When you look at the unvaccinated, that's the population that's ending up largely in hospitals. So I think it's one about trying to get people to get vaccinated, but it's also, not everyone is boosted, and even people who are vaccinated can get infected, and some of them can go on to have serious consequences. So I do believe that the gradual reduction of restrictions would make good sense in Denmark, but to lift it all in one go doesn't really make good public health sense.
A new law comes into force in Austria this week that makes vaccination against COVID-19 compulsory for anyone over 18. Several countries have introduced mandates for the elderly or medical staff, but this is the first nation in Europe to adopt such sweeping measures.
It's a very controversial policy and also quite far-reaching, so the government has decided to this soft landing, so it will only take effect, this mandatory vaccination, by the end of the week. The upper house still has to approve it, and then the people will have time to get their vaccinations until half of March, because then some stiff fines will be handed out, up to 600, but even up to a few thousand euros if they're not vaccinated. Lawyers are already saying there will be lots of lawsuits and court cases against this controversial policy, because people are saying, some here in Austria, around 20% still refuses to be vaccinated. They say our individual rights and our rights to control our own bodies, our rights to self-determination are being violated. So some experts say maybe the policy is going to be counterproductive. People who are refusing to be vaccinated are very determined, and you might even push them further away. But the government says it's the only way out of the pandemic, and individual rights have to be sacrificed for the greater good.
This is the CBC Morning Report. We're back with more after this break. The 7 independent senators chosen by President Her Excellency the Most Honourable Dame Sandra Mason have been named and sworn in. They took the oath of allegiance at State House yesterday. Rianne Phillips reports.
The list of independent senators includes former opposition Senator Crystal Drates and newcomer Andrew Malalu.
A lot of the contributions that I would have made in the past would have always been to the betterment of Barbados. So in terms of policy decisions, I will always have that critical analysis in terms of providing solutions, expanding on anything that needs critiquing. But I assure you that, as Her Excellency just noted, that I will serve in the most independent way as possible.
It's a great responsibility that the President has placed in me, and I'm going to do my best to serve in an independent capacity. I intend to use all the resources I have to talk to the business community, talk to as many advisors as I can to help me in this process.
A number of familiar faces in the likes of Kevin Boyce, Dr. Christopher Maynard, Lyndall Nurse, Reverend Dr. John Rogers, and Monique Tate will also be entering the upper house as independents.
I look forward to the opportunity, especially as we consider the constitution for the new republic.
I hope that my time in the Senate will produce some positive things for the people of this country.
I trust I will be able to continue to represent well for Barbados and as an independent senator.
Our role is simply to, as we say, be a check and balance on the work of the government, but we are government as well, and part of that duty is to ensure that the policies that are put in place are for the betterment of all Barbadians, and that will be what I'll be ensuring to do.
As usual, I will do my best to look after the interests of the people of Barbados and stay on top of things, and hopefully we'll have a wonderfully robust session.
In her brief address, President the Most Honourable Dame Sandra Mason thanked the 7 senators for accepting the roles.
I expect that you will continue in the mode in which you have fashioned independent senatorship in the past few years, and I expect that we will be well served by you all. To the 2 new ones, I want them to fully understand what independence means, and not only independent Barbados, but independent in giving of service to Barbados. I do not know what political party to which you belong or for which you voted, but I want to get your full understanding and acceptance that you are serving the people of Barbados.
The swearing-in ceremony brings the number of senators announced to 19 of 21. Rhiann Phillips, CBC News.
And political analyst Peter Wickham has been weighing in. He's described President Mason's Senate picks as one that would make for interesting conversation.
We have both Wiggins Rock and Julian Hunt. Wiggins Rock had a small business focus, as I understand it. However, Wiggins Rock also became some kind of an envoy for the Barbados Labour Party government, and perhaps that made her unsuited to be re-nominated. So I could understand her removal from the list. Julian Hunt is perplexing, since Julian Hunt is a young senator representing Labour. And his absence now means that there is no Labour focus in terms of the the President's picks. Of course, Her Excellency is under no obligation to either explain her choices or alternatively to ensure that there is a representative of Labour.
And turning his attention to the selection of Crystal Drakes for a second term. He says this time as an independent senator, he regards the senator as an oddity.
She was an opposition senator, even though she rarely ever engaged in political conversations. But clearly she's impressed the presidents because she has now been able to do what very few persons have done, which is to move from the opposition to the independent benches. People have moved in the other direction fairly frequently in our history, but she's moved from the opposition to the independent benches in a way that's rather fascinating. I presume that her focus is environmental, although I'm not sure, but nonetheless, the president, she's found favor with the president, and that's all it takes. And then Mr. Malanu has a business and a sport focus, and he will make an interesting addition to the Senate and should hopefully provoke some interesting conversation.
Dozens of journalists and human rights defenders in El Salvador had their cell phones repeatedly hacked with sophisticated spyware over the past year and a half, that's according to an internet watchdog.
Julia Gavarete's phone had been acting strangely. She relives the moment she realized for sure that it was bugged.
Well, I was driving, and I remember that I got the first email, and by that moment we were confirmed that Pegasus was targeting.
Pegasus, the spying software only sold to governments. Julia was one of 22 staffers at the news site El Faro who had their phones repeatedly infected, according to the University of Toronto's Citizen Lab. She says many of the attacks came as El Faro published exposés on the government of El Salvador, headed by President Nayib Bukele.
What can they pull out of it during an attack?
Everything. They can see, for example, what the message that you are typing, or they can get access to your contacts, to your images, your videos. It's like to having an unlocked cell phone in your hand.
The journalists at El Faro weren't the only ones. Other media outlets and civil rights figures were bugged too, says Citizen Lab, including transparency lawyer Jose Marinero.
I think this is also a sign of the times, a sign of this government. This is a government which is intolerant to critics, is intolerant to public scrutiny, is intolerant to accountability. And while there's still no hard evidence that the spying came from the government, everything seems to point to the doorsteps of the Salvadoran government.
Which strongly denies the phone bugging. But there have been worrying signs that the president doesn't have democracy at the top of his agenda, say critics, starting from 2020, when he marched soldiers into Congress, a shock for a country which only escaped civil war 30 years ago. The president in turn has accused independent media outlets like El Faro of lying and attacking his government. In 2020, he announced the outlet was under investigation for money laundering. In El Salvador, many people are on his side. His approval ratings are in the 80s. In the working class barrio of San Luis III, Carla Vasquez pats out the day's tortillas and tells us why.
He's helped more than the other governments. For them it was only in the campaign. Only then they remembered our neighbourhood. But with him, no. He hasn't forgotten us. He always remembers us, the poorest.
The neighbourhood's less dangerous under Bukele. There's been cash to to help them through the pandemic, even laptops for her boys to be able to keep studying. She dismisses the media exposés as fake news and montages. Like many others, she believes the president. Just walking around this neighbourhood, San Luis 3, you understand why President Bukele is so overwhelmingly popular with the majority of Salvadorans. He's given them money, he's given them food, he's even given them computers for their children during the pandemic. And what all that means to them is that he's someone that's concerned about them, the poorer Salvadorans, in a way that other presidents haven't been. Bukele promises these people he will take care of them. Will he do the same for the country's journalists, lawyers, activists, all those who are critical of him? In El Salvador, that's the burning question.
Diplomatic efforts to avert a Russian invasion of Ukraine have been ramped up, with officials from several sides of the crisis involved in high-level talks. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson arrived in Kyiv and met with the Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky, giving messages of solidarity with the Kyiv government.
Boris, nice to see you. Nice to see you. How are you? It's not every day a prime minister feels relieved to step into a crisis that has the potential of developing into war. But that may well be the way Boris Johnson feels arriving here in Kyiv, away from the Partygate scandal, hoping to deflect attention at home. Here, the Prime Minister is facing what he called a grim reality. But he's a welcome friend, coming with new funding, some $118 million to fight corruption.
Alongside other countries, we are also preparing a package of sanctions and other measures to be enacted the moment the first Russian tow cap crosses further into Ukrainian territory.
The UK has so far trained more than 22,000 Ukrainian soldiers and donated more than $2.5 million in defense aid. These are days of frantic diplomacy. It feels like Kiev has become the center of Europe. There's not one day that goes by without a high-level visit. Money and weaponry are also pouring in. But there's one crucial point that is still lacking, and that is a united front among NATO members. This image could only worry Ukraine. Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban at the Kremlin, meeting Russian President Vladimir Putin. The visit was about signing an energy deal, but the Ukraine crisis took center stage there too. Orban has ruled out any NATO deployment to his country. Around the same time, in Kiev, President Zelensky was meeting with the Polish Prime Minister. Gas was also on the agenda here, finding ways for Ukraine to rely less on Russia when it comes to energy supplies. The Ukrainian president would have also urged his visitors to tone down the rhetoric, feeling that the already fragile economy could go in a tailspin. His message to Ukrainians: this is not the time to panic yet, and the country is well prepared. The government has issued a map with more than 5,000 shelters around Kiev, the main ones being the Soviet-built subway stations. For now, life goes on as usual.
I feel people are worried in words but not in action. If you're talking about people leaving the city or stocking up on food or looking for bomb shelters, I don't think that's happening. I don't know anyone who's thinking like that.
What she, like world leaders, also doesn't know is how all this will end up. This is not only about the sovereignty of Ukraine or its right to one day become part of NATO. It's also about drawing new lines, East and West competing over the new security architecture of Europe. Ukrainians hope they won't be left out in the cold.
Heavy gunfire was heard in the capital of Guinea-Bissau near the seat of the government yesterday, with President Umaro Sissoco Embalo calling it a failed attack against democracy in the West African country. Armed men surrounded the government's palace, where President Embalo and Prime Minister Nuno Namibia were believed to have gone to attend a cabinet meeting.
In a post on his Facebook page, President Umaro Sissoco Embalo shared photos of himself sitting with members of the military. He said some of those involved have now been arrested. The images come out hours after sustained gunfire around the presidential palace in the capital. Embalo says security forces were able to stop what he described as an attack against democracy, but many members of the security forces had died. Armed men had reportedly surrounded the palace, where the president was chairing a cabinet meeting. There have been 9 coups or attempted coups since the former colony gained independence from Portugal in 1974. And just last week there was a coup in Burkina Faso.
We don't know yet the details of what's happening. It is for us clear that coups are totally unacceptable. We are seeing a terrible multiplication of coups, and our strong appeal is for soldiers to go back to the barracks and for the constitutional order to be fully in place in the democratic context of today's Guinea-Bissau.
David Otto is an Africa analyst and the director of the Geneva Centre for Africa Security and Strategic Studies. He's recently returned from West Africa. He joins us via Skype from London. So thanks for being with us. It's a mixed kind of picture, isn't it? The president seems to be saying all is calm. ECOWAS, the regional bloc, was saying earlier it was an attempted coup. What's your impression?
I think it's too early to tell. Perhaps, there could be changes within 48 hours. If there is an ongoing coup, it's likely that, the president would want to show some level of control. But it's very difficult to tell. I mean, what this is actually signifying is that there is a tsunami of, coup d'etats happening in the West and the Sahel. Guinea-Bissau now, we're talking about just recently with Guinea-Conakry, Burkina Faso, and Mali, with all that, attempted and failed coup d'etats. It's not looking good, but we can't really say for sure what the situation is as we speak.
To sports now, England marched into the finals of the ICC Under-19 World Cup with a 15-run victory over Afghanistan via the Duckworth-Lewis system yesterday at the North Sound ground in Antigua. Chasing a target of 232 in a game reduced to 47 overs per side owing to rain, the young Afghans were limited to 215 for 9. Spinner Rehan Ahmad snapped 4 for 41. Earlier, England, winning the toss, recovered from 136 for 6 to score 231 for 6. This was thanks to a 95-run unbroken partnership between player of the match George Bell with 56 and Alex Horton with 53. George Thomas chipped in with an even 50 at the top of the order as well. Here are the highlights. Office earlier today. At the moment, Barbados is at 24.5 degrees Celsius under partly cloudy skies with a slight haze. The winds are coming from the east-northeast at 22 kilometers an hour. There is a low tide scheduled for 27 minutes to 11 this morning, the second at 11:15 tonight, and a one high tide at 40 minutes to 5 this afternoon. Seas are predicted to be moderate in open water with swells ranging between 1.5 to 2 meters, but with the possibility of increasing. And so Barbados today is forecast to have a mix of sunshine and clouds with occasional brief scattered light to moderate showers. That's today. Tonight, there's a forecast of a mix of clear skies and clouds with a few brief scattered light showers. And now a look at some forecast conditions for our international cities. And that's it for today's edition of the CBC Morning Report. I'm Pearson Bowen. Morning Barbados starts now.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Barbados, get up. Good morning. Good morning, Barbados. Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning. Morning, morning, morning.
Good morning to you and welcome to Wednesday the 2nd of February 2022. I am Pearson Bowen, welcoming all of you everywhere, whether you're here or over there. Thank you so much for watching us every morning indeed, and for joining us also on our YouTube and Facebook streams. Remember, our Facebook page is Mornin Barbados. That's where you can join us to interact. Your comments are always welcome. We encourage you also after the show to go back there and you'll see the show yet again if you've missed anything at all in the time we spend with you in the morning. Now this morning, Wednesday, we'll be taking a look at a colposcopy. What is it? And what are you hoping to discover? One takes has a colposcopy. Our gynecologist will join us to look a little bit deeper into that subject as well. Sustaining the treasure of our nation's efficiency. We're looking at our aging population as we continue to share with the students of social work at the University of the West Indies. They'll join us to look at that, our aging population, in particular elder abuse. That's going to be an interesting subject, I believe, that we can look at. And we continue our conversation with our expert Joan Underwood into building a high-performance team. Last week we talked about developing your team charter. This week we're going even further. Do not miss it. Have your books handy and ready as well. Of course, you'll have your opportunity this morning to guess the spot as we take our chance to hear from you, how well you know Barbados, and we'll share with you our good decision of the day. Plus, we'll tell you a little bit more about the Gyon Awards for 2022. Speaking of which, that's exactly where we'll start this morning with a young man who is a social media personality of the year, a nominee in the 2022 Gyon Awards. His name is Luke Lascaris. He is a nominee indeed, and we say good morning to you, Luke.
Hi, good morning, Pearson. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome indeed. Thank you for coming through. So talk to me a little bit about yourself so that we get to understand who you are and why you have been nominated as a social media personality of the year.
Well, all I can say is that I guess the nomination came from Twitter because I'm an avid user on Twitter and have a lot of following. We have a lot of fun on there, but that's all I can really say from it. I really wasn't quite expecting the nomination in the first place. So, like I said, it came off of Twitter. I was surprised as anybody else. It was
So the question naturally plants in my head then, what is it that you do on Twitter that causes people to pay attention to you and to be influenced by you?
We just really have a lot of fun on Twitter, but the conversation is always very dynamic. It can move from jokes one day, it can move from, a little roughhousing, and then sometimes we have important conversations. We've had conversations on governance, civic duty, responsibility. We've had LGBT issues. We've talked about monetary issues, financial issues. We've talked about election issues. The pink economy, we've talked about a whole stuff. The creative economy and orange economy, it's been really quite a conversation on Twitter that's very wide-ranging.
You know, you could have kept your mouth shut, kept your thoughts to yourself, probably shared it with a handful of friends you have and your 2 cats. But you decided you're going to share all of this with the rest of the world. What is it that you want to achieve, and what is it that your voice, you believe, ought to be able to say?
I guess greater connections among people, especially among millennials and Generation Z. It didn't start out as a movement or wanting to actually connect with people, but the platform really did give me a chance to connect with a lot of people and really share conversations and drive, and opens people's minds, broaden their perspectives, help them to understand things in a different light, and in the same way that I learned from them, they also learned from me.
So now I'm curious, and what have you learned from them? What are the people saying back to you about a read? Pick a subject and tell me what they're saying to you.
I mean, like I said, there's always great conversation. Let's say on governance, I say, oh, I didn't know why this person, let's say ex-minister is doing this, and somebody the parents say, oh, you know, masters in social policy, this is why they were perfectly slotted to this ministry. Or you say, I don't understand why this senator is here, and they say, okay, well, he has this background here, she has this background there. It gives a lot of information. With the orange economy, or with different aspects of the orange economy, I say I don't understand why this is this, or with tourism, I don't understand why that is that. And somebody appear, some expert somewhere, I would appear and give their information. I'll be, okay, I learned something today. So it's always, I personally find it's always a great time. Even with mental health issues, somebody appear and say, okay, this is, you're having a battle with your mental health, this is what I recommend, this is what my therapist has said. And it's always a collaborative experience.
There are lots of us who are skeptical of the social media space because it has its good, but it also has its dangers. And how do you safeguard so that people don't abuse your space and to use it for something bad when your simple intention is to use it for something good?
Yes, that is always a tricky experience on social media, especially on Twitter, where it can sometimes be seen as very toxic. But I really try to as much focus on people who interact positively with me and ignore the trolls, because you get that. You get somebody digging up an old tweet to come and curse you one day, like they don't like your opinion, they don't like what you said. So you'd always have that, but I really try to focus on people who really do want to interact with you genuinely, who are positive people. Yeah, that's just really basically my focus. But I do understand why people would be skeptical of social media platforms like Twitter, where the connections are lightning fast.
Yeah, and people assume they know you when really and truly they do not.
That
all they know
is exactly
all they know is what you put out. But do you find, and I'm going to reach on the honesty factor for just a moment, because there's this mirror that one has in one's house, and then there's another mirror that one projects to the outside world. And how honest are you in the space of your social media platforms that would allow people to know who you are?
I like my authenticity, and I think that's part of my, I guess I would say, personal brand, that why people are so attracted to me, why people follow me, people like my tweets, why people engage with me, because they see something in themselves. There's that type of authenticity, there's that type of relatability. It's like, you know, you make these jokes and it's like, oh, there's a meme that's on Twitter, I'd be like, oh, he's just like me, you know. So it's that type of experience. So I like to say that the mirror in my house and the mirror, I guess with the mirror image that I would put out there are basically the same. So there's no real differentiation where it is that I feel like I have to put on a mask to be on social media and then take it off and I'm a different personality at home. It's all very across the board, very genuine, very, like I say, relatable. Just keep it as down to earth as I like.
One of the things I see here noted is that you look forward one day to becoming, at least serving in the Senate. Tell me why that's part of your goals.
Really and truly, to be quite honest, as a joke, as a running joke that we've had on Twitter, is like, you know, I'm like, I want my Senate seat, you know, this is what I'm going after, this is what I want to do. But really and truly, I think serving in the Senate is ideal to strive towards. I believe in, like I said, representation for young people. I also believe in, there are many issues, constitutional reform, LGBT issues, issues regarding creatives and the orange economy that all need focus. And I think there's time for a much needed voice within the Senate, which isn't in the House of Assembly. Somebody that sits somewhere differently, probably an independent senator, because it doesn't need to be a government senator, where you are able to shape policy and you're able to shape laws and say, okay, this needs to be included. We need to consider this perspective. We need to consider this other perspective that wouldn't just generally, I don't find it's there on a regular basis.
You know, there is someone at home who's saying, I keep hearing this word orange economy, and I don't have a clue what that is. Yes. What is this young man talking about? What do you say to them then about what is the orange economy?
The orange economy is a very broad-based economic pillar that speaks towards arts and the creative sector, arts and culture. So it encompasses many, many people. So many people, let's say crop over, for example. Many people within the crop over sphere would be considered under the orange economy. It wouldn't just be band leaders or the creatives, it's the social media managers, it's the content curators, it's the photographers, it's the videographers, it's the people who put the stages together, it's the people who have to put the backpacks together, who work at the band houses. It encompasses a large area. The artists, the singers, the performers, the songwriters, the producers, sound technicians, sound engineers. Like you get a general sense of it. It's a very, very broad area of the economy, but I believe it was the UN, or either UN or UNESCO, who were saying that for the Caribbean and Latin America, the orange economy is a major economic driver. I think a study that came out in 2017 that can be a major economic driver for economies like ours that focus on the arts, that have traditionally neglected the arts, but there's a massive pool there that's available for us to tap into that can really move our economy forward and, I guess, diversify it away from tourism.
So there it is. It's
very
rich.
Explains it properly.
Well, we'll see. They will tell us what they don't quite get. But, you know, at least it clarifies in some major ways some of what they misunderstood about what is the orange economy. So the day you got the information that you were nominated as part of the Gyon Awards, tell me how that happened.
That was quite a surprise, actually. I got somebody said, I think it was either a tweet or a direct message. Somebody says, like, oh, you've been nominated. Nah, actually, it was WhatsApp. Somebody said, you've been nominated. I'm like, what are you talking about? they're like, you've been nominated for Gyon Awards. And I'm like, how did I make the short list? Like,
yes.
I didn't expect that at all. It was really, I felt quite touched, to be quite honest. It was really, something quite refreshing. Did not expect it at all. But the list is, as young people say, the list tough, you know, heavy.
Yeah, it's a big award. It's a big award. And so it's left now, therefore, to the people of Barbados to vote whether or not they choose you to be their social media personality of the year. And I really hope that people go online. It's an online voting scenario, and I hope people really go onto the website gyon.com and you can vote. Vote for Luke Lascaris, young man, former Combomerian, proud he is indeed. I know once you say that, up and all will rise up. You know, all of them will find their feet. There you go. They'll find their feet and they'll find their fingers moving towards the website to vote for you as well. Luke, when you're not on Twitter, what are you doing?
You know, I stay at home. I take care of my nephew and my niece. I'm a cat dad, as the young people say. So I have 2 young cats, and everybody on my Instagram always asks me to post pictures of them and, you know, showcase them because I adopted them free. So that takes the majority of my time. If it's not that, then it's somewhere doing some content creation or writing or taking pictures. Yeah, that's really basically.
What a life you live. What a life you live indeed. Luke Lascaris, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Congratulations on your nomination. I wish you success in the upcoming awards as well. And who knows, when you receive the award, come back and let us know. We'd love to celebrate it with you, okay? Good man.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome indeed. Gyon.com is the website to which you go, and you're going to the People's Choice Awards. That's where you're voting for Luke Lascaris, who's a nominee in the Social Media Personality of the Year category. Thank you for joining us, Luke. We'll take a break here on Morning Barbados, and we're coming back with more in just a moment.
Morning, morning, morning. to you.
So here we are, we're going to get an education in colposcopy. What is it? But of course, you know, we're going to get it from this young man, Dr. John Barker, who we nominate as our OB obstetrician gynecologist of the year. Good morning to you, Dr. Barker. Yes, it's one of those toe twisters. How are you doing, my friend?
Good morning, how are you?
I'm well, man. I'm well. Thank you for coming through. Colposcopy. Settle down, settle. Colposcopy. What are we talking about here?
Right. Essentially, colposcopy is the use of a lower-powered microscope to look at the neck of the womb or the cervix, and usually it is after one has done a cervical smear, and the smear either has a low-grade abnormality or a high-grade abnormality. So essentially, it's an outpatient procedure whereby the gynecologist looks at the neck of the womb to see if there is any issues. Now, the picture that you see is what you call a colposcope. So it's essentially a low-powered microscope. And the way how we look at the cervix is once the patient is sat down on the bed or lies down on the bed, we then place a chemical called acetic acid on the neck of the womb. The acetic acid binds with the protein in the abnormal cells. So essentially what you get is like a whitish like display on the cervix, on the cervix, if any abnormality.
Before we go on, what takes a woman into you to have this procedure? What brings her there in the first place?
Right. So essentially, when the lady has a cervical smear or a pap smear, if the smear actually comes back abnormal, so there are lower grade abnormalities, which would be approximately 3 types, which would be what we call ascus or agus. That's ASGUS. So essentially, what that is the cervix has 2 types of cells on it. Squamous cells, which are on the outside, so these are like hard, like the cells on your cheek, or what we call glandular cells, which are found in the actual neck of the womb itself, because the neck of the womb is like a cylinder. So the outside of the cylinder is the squamous cells, which is the harder type cells, and the glandular cells are actually inside the actual cylinder. So these are much softer. So if you have any abnormalities from this subset, then you have to get a colposcopy.
And that as a consequence of a pap smear. You had your pap smear and there are some abnormalities that were detected, and now you go to the colposcopy. So the low-grade abnormalities that you're talking about, because clearly if there's a low, there has to be a high. But let's look at the low-grade abnormalities. How do they present and what are they?
Right, so most of the time they present asymptomatically. So essentially, you do the smear, and then the smear results come back. And the objective of doing the cervical smear is to prevent cervical cancer. So in the picture below, what you have is a very low grade abnormality at around 7 o'clock position. The cervix is the entire thing that you're seeing, and the slit is the actual neck of the womb. So that's where the babies come out. So but at 7 o'clock is where the low grade region is. So as you see, it's staining white, and the edges are quite clear. So once we see that on the colposcope, then we think is a lower grade lesion, and we go by the saying, seeing is believing and tissue is the issue. So essentially what we would do then is take a biopsy of that abnormality there, then to send it off to the lab to see exactly what it is. Now, the importance of the other low grade lesions, which should be sometimes you have cells, but you don't know exactly where they're coming from. And even though what we would do then would be a HPV test as well. So if you have a low grade abnormality, but the HPV is negative, which is human papillomavirus, then you don't necessarily have to do colposcopy. But if you have a positive HPV, then you will go ahead and do the colposcopy. Once we do the biopsy, then the biopsy will either confirm or deny what our clinical impression of the actual lesion is.
So you go to that little lighter area and you take a little oomph of it and you do your testing as you go forward from there. So what's the...
Yes, please.
Pretty much, right? See, I'm learning a lot from you guys every week, you know. So what happens after that? Having done it and you're testing, you put it under your microscope and you looked at it and you figure, oh boy, how do we begin to treat it?
Right. So essentially, if it's a lower grade lesion, like the one that we just saw, there are two modalities. Either you can freeze it, which is called cryotherapy, or you can essentially burn it, which is cold coagulation. So essentially, the picture that you see there is a cold coagulation machine. So essentially, the tip, which is the goal, I'm not sure if you can see it clearly, but at the end of the long tube, there's a brass colored thing. So that actually goes on the neck of the wound after we have given the patient local anesthetic, and essentially for about a minute, it basically destroys the thin lining of the actual outside of the wound. And then after that is done, we usually tell the patients that they might get a discharge afterwards, so no intercourse or anything for at least a week, at least 2 weeks, and no douching or anything like that. And usually afterwards, we would then repeat the cervical smear in about 6 months just to see if it's normal.
Okay, all right. And then there's the high grade. Let's move to the high grade now. So that means obviously now we're talking about a closer to a danger zone, so to speak.
Yeah, yes. Once we do the cervical smear and it comes back high grade, there are essentially three different things that we try to rule out. So the first one in terms of levels would be what we call CIN2, CIN3, and cancer, which is what we're trying to rule out or prevent. So essentially in the picture, there are three different pictures that you see. The first one is like what we described before. Right. The second, CIN2 and 3, which is when we go in, we will see a bright white stain in when we put on the acetic acid. So essentially what we would do then is a CN3, meaning that we do an excision technique. The excision technique would be one called a LEX, which is large loop excision of the transformation zone. And essentially what that is, if you look at the third picture, you would see a large lesion. So we actually have to take all of that out. And the way how we do it is in the next picture, which just went up by, is we use, right, this is what we call a loop. So essentially what it is a long plastic device with a wire edge at the top. So essentially this is then connected to a current. And once the patient is properly anesthetized, so essentially have to do a local anesthetic. The local anesthetic contains adrenaline as well. The reason for that is that the cervix is very vascular. So once you give the local anesthetic, the adrenaline actually contracts the blood vessels. And then essentially what we do is remove a little bit of the cervix. This then goes to the lab to either confirm the severity of the lesion or not. Now, if it is CIN2 and 3, then that's fine. What we look for is complete excision of the actual abnormal area. If, however, it is cancer in the unlikely event, Essentially, most of the time is microscopic cancer, but the procedure itself can actually cure it. So if it, depending on the stage, because there's different stages, so if it's the very, very early stage, then the actual procedure will treat it. Sometimes a hysterectomy alone would do it as well too. However, depending, but just a few millimeters, must add, depending on the extent of the cancer, then you will have to get a radical hysterectomy and lymph node dissection. So in terms of the actual LETS procedure itself, most of the time it will remove the high-grade lesion, but if it's cancer dependent, then we have to discuss it in a multidisciplinary team, and then also too depending on the stage that it is. Because once you get to cancer, it's all important as to the stage that it is.
So in one instance, you can just zap it off, so to speak, off the cervix, and it's gone. But if it's at cancer stage, then it takes a little bit more detailed procedure going forward after some discussion as to how you treat it. What causes it? What causes it in the first place, though? This is
human papillomavirus. That is the nemesis of the gynecologist. So essentially, what happens is that when you're exposed to HPV, most people clear it. But they have two types of HPV, which is the low risk and the high risk HPV. The low risk HPV is associated with stuff like warts and stuff, whereas the high risk HPV is associated with the cervical abnormalities. And over 95-97% of cancers are due to the HPV virus. So depending on how the patient clears the virus, then it would stay in the cervix, and then it will cause the cells to become abnormal. So in terms of long term, in terms of next 20, 30 years, that's why the HPV vaccine is very important, because it would technically decrease the workload and the actual exposure to the patients to such procedures in terms of colposcopy and or cervical cancer. So that's his thinking behind the HPV vaccine.
But the introduction of the HPV into the body at all is as a consequence of sexual activity. Am I reading it correctly? So naturally it flows on the opposite. If there's no sexual activity, the likelihood. Is that a fair conclusion?
Well, everything has its risk in a nutshell. And actually, HPV is quite prevalent in the society. And as a result of this, you can't really stop it, but you can try to prevent it in terms of the HPV. And that's why the HPV vaccine is very important, because once you are immunized against it, then in terms of long-term repercussions of abnormal smears and cervical cancer, you should theoretically see a decrease in these disorders in the coming years. So that's why it's important to get the vaccine.
You spoke about a discharge following the procedure, colposcopy. Would the period of this discharge be the same whether it's low or high grade? The duration of this discharge?
Right. Well, good question. If you get freezing, essentially what it is freezing the neck of the womb. So what you get will be like, once the neck of the womb is defrosting and stuff, you get like a slough inside, which actually comes out. So that's why you get a clearish light discharge immediately after the procedure, and that should settle. Everybody is different. Sometimes you might develop an infection afterwards, so you tell any person who has had the procedure if they get any abnormal smells or if the actual discharge is a different color, then to see the gynecologist so we can put you on antibiotics. Usually if you get the coagulation, which is the heat applied to it, you can get a slight discharge, not as much as the freezing, but usually within a few days that settles as well. In relation to the excision, which is the LETS, so essentially what you would get is a slight bleed or brownish discharge immediately afterwards, and this should settle within a week or two. So that's why we tell people to avoid any intercourse or anything after the procedures to prevent or to decrease the incidence of the infection. But usually after 2 weeks or so, shouldn't be much discharge unless you have an issue.
And then the follow-up is roughly within about 6 months or so.
Yeah, for the excisional techniques, as long if you have up to CIN3, then essentially what you get is a cervical smear and a HPV4 test secure. And for the lower grade lesions, you can repeat it in 6 months as well to see if the abnormality is still there. And then once, if everything is normal at that visit, the 6-month visit, then the patient goes back into normal recall. For cancer, it's different because then it would be a 10-year follow-up.
Okay, so because you just answered my question without me having to ask it at all, and that a 10-year follow-up, all right. Dr. Barker, my friend, it's always good to see you. Again, I'm nominating you in the Gyon Awards as the OB/GYN of the year. So thank you so much as usual for joining us this morning.
Thanks a lot, appreciate it.
You're very welcome indeed.
Okay,
Dr. John Barker, our obstetrician gynecologist, we looked at that colposcopy. It starts with a pap smear, and then should there be anything abnormal, you're referred then to the OB/GYN for further follow through. Ladies, let's take it seriously. We're going to take a break here. When we come back, we have the news on Morning Barbados.
Morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
Let's share with you the news now. The Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association believes that with tourist figures continuing to improve, the visitor experience should be exceptional, and one area they'd like to see improved and enhanced is at the airport. Rudy Grant, the Chief Executive Officer of the Hotel Association, says it will be calling on the government to make some changes pertaining to travel protocols.
One of the persistent sources of concern continues to be the airport experience. Against this background, we will shortly be recommending to the Government of Barbados, through the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport, changes to the Barbados travel protocols in a manner that maintains our competitiveness while ensuring that health and safety are not compromised. The Barbados tourism industry is on the rebound, but it is still faced with many challenges and great uncertainty. The industry recovery must be assessed in a holistic manner that takes account of all the variables in this dynamic environment.
Some players in the fast food industry are being sandwiched by internal and external rising costs. And with patronage numbers still being limited owing to COVID-19, they're saying it's tough. Everett Eastman of Sky Mall told CBC News that energy and sanitization costs are spiraling, but they cannot be controlled that easily because business operation standards must also remain high.
We have that. We have the latest in the rise in labour costs, which is warranted because, you know, with rising prices, that is warranted to to make sure that the people who work for us are rewarded. We then also have the high energy costs that we have to deal with. If we look at even the energy costs that have risen, the energy part of our bill has risen from about 20 cents to now nearly 35 cents, a big increase. And of course all the other things that going along with to keep the place at the right standard of hygiene and so forth. So it's all of these costs, and it's a double-edged sword because at the same time we have to restrict the numbers coming in that we can serve. There's a cost to running that whole hygiene and sanitary stuff. So we're impacted on both sides of the coin.
Barbados has recorded another COVID-related death. The Ministry of Health and Wellness notes that a 69-year-old woman passed away at the Harrison Point Isolation Facility on Monday as a result of the viral illness. Her death brings the total number of casualties to 281. Meanwhile, Barbados recorded 786 new COVID-19 cases on Monday. There were 2,954 tests conducted by the Besto Santos Public Health Lab on that day. The new positives comprise 157 under the age of 18. Number of people in isolation facilities now stands at 177, while 10,710 people are in home isolation. Under the vaccination program, 158,705 people have received one dose, and 147,190 people are fully vaccinated. The 7 independent senators chosen by Her Excellency the Most Honorable Dame Sandra Mason, President of Barbados, have been named and sworn in. They took the office of oath of allegiance at State House yesterday. Rianne Phillips reports.
The list of independent senators includes former opposition Senator Crystal Drates and newcomer Andrew Malalu.
A lot of the contributions that I would have made in the past would have always been to the betterment of Barbados. So in terms of policy decisions, I will always have that critical analysis in terms of providing solutions, expanding on anything that needs critiquing. But I assure you that, as Her Excellency just noted, that I will serve in the most independent way as possible.
It's a great responsibility that the President has placed in me, and I'm going to do my best to serve in an independent capacity. I intend to use all the resources I have to talk to the business community, talk to as many advisors as I can to help me in this process.
A number of familiar faces in the likes of Kevin Boyce, Dr. Christopher Maynard, Lindell Nurse, Reverend Dr. John Rogers, and Monique Tate will also be entering the upper house as independents.
I look forward to the opportunity, especially as we consider the constitution for the new republic.
I hope that my time in the Senate will produce some positive things for the people of this country.
I trust I will be able to continue to represent well for Barbados and as an independent senator.
Our role is simply to, as we say, be a check and balance on the work of the government, but we are government as well, and part of that duty is to ensure that the policies that are put in place are for the betterment of all Barbadians, and that will be what I'll be ensuring to do.
As usual, I will do my best to look after the interests of the people of Barbados and stay on top of things, and hopefully we'll have a wonderfully robust session.
In her brief address, President the Most Honorable Dame Sandra Mason thanked the 7 senators for accepting the roles.
I expect that you will continue in the mode in which you have fashioned independent senatorship in the past few years, and I expect that we will be well served by you all. To the 2 new ones, I want them to fully understand what independence means, and not only independent Barbados, but independent in giving of service to Barbados. I do not know what political party to which you belong or for which you voted, but I want to get your full understanding and acceptance that you are serving the people of Barbados.
The swearing-in ceremony brings the number of senators announced to 19 of 21. Rianne Phillips, CBC News.
Rianne, thank you. That brings us to the end of our news. At this moment, we'll have more news coming up at 12 noon here on TV8 in the CBC Newsday. On radio, the next newscast is at 8 o'clock and again at 1 o'clock this afternoon. We'll take a break here on Morning Barbados and we're back with more in just a moment.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you. Morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
So let's do this. You know, right after the news, we always share with you what we think is a good decision of the day. Today's good decision of the day comes your way now with 5 ways to help your child build good judgment, peer pressure, and judgment. That's what we're looking at today. Children as young as 3 years old are influenced by peer pressure. Would you believe it? Their natural need to be accepted by a group may contribute to discussions and decisions with negative impacts. This behavior is more common in the teen years when young adults are trying to establish their own identities. High self-esteem reduces the chances of your child will give you into peer pressure. When your child makes a good decision, praise them openly. Praise them openly. I can't say it enough. Praise them openly when they make a good decision. Your opinion of them forms an integral part of their own self-identity. Your child's judgment skills are a big part of any potential success they might achieve in life. Give them the tools to choose the right path, even when they aren't there. You aren't there to guide them. Even when you're not there because of what you've put in, give them those tools so that they can all be successful and achieve. So let's help them to build good judgment by praising them when they do make a good decision. Share with them the ways that they ought to go, and they will naturally follow the path. So let that today be a part of your good decision of the day. Now, let's have some fun. Let's guess the location. You ready for this? Yeah, man. Call me now. 228-5562 or 228-5563. Let's see how well you know this beautiful island of ours. Let's guess this location. Where is this? Where is this? 228-5562 or 228-5563. Where is this? If you think you do know, dial me now. If you're not sure you know where it is, still dial me now. 228-5562 or 228-5563. We'll learn together and we'll share with you a little bit more about where this is too. So where is it? Where is this? Come on, do you know Barbados that well, really? Good morning to you. Hello.
Good morning.
Hi, how are you today?
Fine, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome indeed. What parish are you watching us from?
St. George.
St. George, all right. You all have C in St. George? No, Pearson. Where exactly in St. George are you?
Flat Rock.
Flat Rock, St. George. How do you get to Flat Rock?
This is nearest to Chefette in Charlesboro Bridge.
Oh, near to Charlesboro Bridge. All right, I got it now. I can see the location. And when I get to the Chefette in Charlesboro Bridge, if Chefette is on my left, where do I turn or do I go straight up that little hill?
Keep straight up the hill.
Ah, and then you go past the bakery and so forth.
Yes. And you're
I got you now.
Yes.
Then I'm heading to Flat Rock.
Yes.
See, I'm learning. I'm learning even from you. So, where is this?
Well, I'm guessing it's Pico Tenerife.
You're guessing it's Pico Tenerife?
Yes.
And Pico Tenerife is in what parish?
Oh, there.
All right, north, east, west, or south? Where is it? Okay, then let me ask you another question. When was the last time you went to Pico Tenerife?
Never.
You've never been to Pico Tenerife?
No.
You have never? And you've always lived here? Answer the question. Have you always lived here?
Yes.
And so you've never taken a bus to travel to the north of the island, for instance?
No. Well, yes, I have traveled.
Oh, because I was telling you you're
Yeah,
missing a
that's
good
right.
portion. You're missing a good portion of your life when you don't travel to the north of the island. So maybe tomorrow, if you can, get someone. Do you drive?
Well, I had an accident, so I'm now recuperating.
Oh my! Well, I hope that all goes well for you in the future. But
Thank you.
your answer is wrong.
Oh, okay.
But thank you for trying. Okay.
You.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All the best to her as she recuperates as well. It's so unfortunate she had her accident, but she sounds hearty, so she'll do well. So we haven't had a correct answer yet. So folks, where is this? Where is this? It is not Pico Tenerife. We know that. Good morning. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. How are you doing, sir?
Not too bad, sir. You?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Where are you watching us from?
St. Leonard's Boys School.
From where?
St. Leonard's Boys School.
You're at work?
Yes, please.
You do security?
Yes, sir.
All right, sir. And what parish do you normally reside in?
St. Joseph.
St. Joseph. So you should be able to look off the coast and tell me where this is then.
I think at East Coast.
You think it's off the East Coast?
Yes, please.
But where exactly? Bathsheba?
Yeah.
You only say that because I said it. Is that you're thinking it's Bathsheba?
Yes, please.
And the last time you went to Bathsheba was?
3 days ago.
And do you remember driving through Bathsheba and you saw this location?
Well, I kind of had a glimpse at it.
And this is what you remember seeing, right?
Well, let's say that. Well,
Do you remember when The Bold and the Beautiful came to Barbados to film?
Yes, please.
And they went down to Bathsheba?
Yeah.
And they used an abandoned house that was on a rock?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Off the cliff.
Do you see the house on this rock?
My TV here weren't showing too well.
I like your answer. Your answer is wrong, but I like the way you responded to me. But thank you for trying, sir. No, that's not right. My TV at work is not showing well. I like that excuse, indeed. So far, 2 wrongs. Can we get it right? 228-5562 or 228-5563. Where is this? This is Barbados we're talking about. If you're somewhere else overseas, remember our area code is 246. So it's 1-246-228-5562 or 5563. Let's see. So good morning to you. Hello.
Morning.
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. And what about you?
I'm well, thank you as well. Thank you for asking. What parish are you watching us from?
St. Michael.
St. Michael, all right. And you're more like to the west coast of St. Michael, or are you central St. Michael?
More to the south.
More to the south coast. So are you nearer to the beach?
Yes, I am.
Well, you know for sure this is nowhere on the west coast, right?
No, I know it's not.
So where is this?
Is this Culpeper Island?
Don't ask me questions. Where is this?
This is Culpeper Island.
What makes you so certain?
I spent time in that area when I was much younger.
Really?
Yes, like when
What
you
was
go to
it?
Skeets Bay,
Uh-huh.
and you can see it from off the beach on Skeets Bay.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So how do you get to Skeets Bay? I'm in the bus.
You go through into Tree Houses,
Mm-hmm.
follow the road straight up, then you make a right turn, and
Right.
then you make a left, and you go down an incline, and you get to Skeets Bay where the
Oh, I can see the
parking
road.
is. Right.
I can see the road. I can see the road in my head already. I see where you're taking me down, and you believe that takes me down to this point here, where I can
That you
see
can see it,
this.
yes.
And you think this is Culpeper Island,
I think so.
and you're not sure if this is not off North Point.
North Point.
Yeah, you make it sound as if that's not possible. She laughing at me. This woman laughing at me this break morning. Ma'am, you're absolutely right. It is Culpeper. You can stop laughing at me now. Culpeper Island indeed. That's what Culpeper is. And so, you know, we've met the queen of Culpeper, right?
Yes, I identified the other one yesterday, which was Enterprise Beach.
Excellent. You know your beaches, girl. You know your beaches indeed. But that's Culpeper Island. We met our queen of Culpeper, Movell Jordan. She will tell you that's where her throne resides. But nonetheless, thank you so much for calling, and well done. Well done. You know our island. Well done. Thank you so much. She said as a girl, she spent many vacations in this area. This is Culpeper Island. Now that sea, you think it looks really near, right? But that sea can change on you, so be very careful for anyone who wants to be bold enough to slip across to the island and visit with the queen of Culpeper, our friend Movell. So well done to her. So, want to share with you some other stuff as well, some other things going on, but we'll take the break first and we're coming back with more.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you. Morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
So you know we're having our Valentine's promotion here on Morning Barbados, right? You know you have a chance to win, don't you? I think you already do. And so it is required now for you to get with your sweetheart and you do a 1 minute video, just 1 minute video, send it to us. That 1 minute video really tells your love story, your love story. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to tell us how deeply in love you are. Make that 1 minute video telling the story of your love, send it by WhatsApp to 467-5465 with your name and your contact details. It's exactly 1 week from today that your deadline is. You don't have a lot of time. You're winning a stay with Infinity on the beach and some other wonderful goodies. So keep watching and tell us that video. So send in that video quick. You just need to send one video. Send it via WhatsApp to 467-5465 with your name and your contact details. I don't care how old this couple is. It doesn't matter. If you're newly in love or long in love, it doesn't matter. Show us your love. Tell us your love story in a video, 1 minute long, and send it by WhatsApp to 467-5465. You have until the 9th of February to get your entry in and stand by for a chance to win. You could very well be spending those 2 nights and 3 days at the Infinity on the beach in St. Lawrence Gap. It's literally on the water's edge, and you'll enjoy all of the amenities at that stellar location indeed. We introduced you earlier to one of those nominated on the Gyon Awards. Gyon.com is the website to which you can go to vote for some of those who've been nominated in their respective categories. We shared with you the social media personality of the year, one of them, Luke Lascaris, earlier today, but there are many other areas in which people are nominated as well. So the Gyon People's Choice Awards official nominees have been listed on the website Gyon.com. You have some time to go and vote, and VOTE. You have until the 13th of February to get your vote in. Cast your vote and look out for that chance to celebrate with these young people in Barbados who are doing wonderful things in the creative space, thanks to DJ Simon and Empress Zinga. Now, we have some people here from the CBC who are also nominated in some categories. Some of them include Shane Jones, who's been nominated for the Activist of the Year. We have Shane Jones and Mr. Shock, aka Shane Clark, who've been nominated for Social Media Personality of the Year. That's Shane Clark right there. In radio, we have DJ Ras, AON Skills, DJs Indian and Chris Gale, who are right there on your screen. That's Skills right there. They've been nominated for DJ of the Year. Also, AON Skills and DJ Indian for Radio Personality of the Year. We thank you for your votes. We thank you for your several votes. Mr. Shock, Shockwave Entertainment, Shane Clark for Sound Engineer of the Year. And lastly, yes, the Stand Home Party for the online event of the year. You have a chance to VOTE to vote by going to Gyon.com. Gyon.com, look for the categories and vote. You have until the 13th of February to get your vote in. Gyon People's Choice Awards. Big this year. And of course, we'll be checking in with DJ Simmons and Empress Zinga to bring us up to date on what's been going on there. So sound your voice by your vote, indeed. Now, one of those so familiar faces to Mornin Barbados, Ashley Lashley, and the Ashley Lashley Foundation, she's a UNICEF youth advocate. They're going to be doing a number of things. What are they doing? Well, she was selected as the Leader of the Month by the Clara Lionel Foundation. Yes, Ashley Lashley, selected as the Leader of the Month by the Clara Lionel Foundation. The Clara Lionel Foundation is a non-profit organization founded in 2012 by Rihanna to honor her grandparents Clara and Lionel Brathwaite. And so the Hey campaign is one of those recognized by the Clara Lionel Foundation. So congratulations to Ashley Lashley. It's February, and while we celebrate our African awareness, we're normally also celebrating our blackness. And so this month we want to mark and recognize Donald Willard Moore. Sounds like a major name, I know. Donald William Willard Moore. Who is he? He is a Barbadian activist who led a group to Ottawa, Canada, to fight for our rights. He was born at Lodge Hill in St. Michael on the 2nd of November 1891. There he is among his pair. He left his family behind. He emigrated to the United States, left New York for Montreal, found work with the Canadian Pacific Railway, and the rest is history. But he retired from business and public life in 1975, and in August 1994, he died in his sleep at the age of 102. He's Barbadian. And so we recognize him too this morning for his outstanding great work in recognizing black people. And lastly, The last thing I want to tell you about this morning, that today is World Read Aloud Day. World Read Aloud Day. It's a global effort created by the non-profit Lit World and sponsored by the Scholastic, is celebrated annually in over 173 countries, and it's about bringing people together through the shared connection of reading aloud in all communities. So today is Read Aloud Day, World Read Aloud Day. So take up a book, take your newspaper, take something, read aloud. You'll hear yourself, you'll hear your mistakes, it's okay. Just read aloud, and you get to love reading as it goes. We'll take a break here. We're coming back with more on Morning Barbados.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you. Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
You know, Eddie Grantner has a song called Romancing the Stone, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, STONE, which is an acronym that stands for Sustaining the Treasures of Our Nation Efficiently. And that's part of the work conducted by the social workers, those who are studying social work at the University of the West Indies. Joining us this morning to talk more about STONE, the acronym, is Michelle Williams, a final year student in the social work program. With her is Therese James, who we met before, the lecturer and director of field education in the Department of Government, Sociology, Social Work and Psychology at the Cavell campus. And also with them is Dr. Lana Husbands, who is a gerontologist. Good morning, each of you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Indeed, welcome. Dr. Husbands, I'll start with you as one who studies gerontology. Give us a sense, I know it's the study of the old, the aged. Barbados is known to be an aging population. We have quite a number of people who are quite old. So we'll try to get the audio sorted out for Dr. Husbands in the meantime, and when we get that sorted out, I'll get back to that question. Perhaps then I can slip over to you, Michelle. Michelle, talk to me then about this project that you're on, STONE, which is Sustaining Treasures of Our National for National Efficiency. Why that acronym STONE?
Well, thank you, Pearson, for hosting us this morning. Welcome this morning to the Barbados population, to Morning Barbados. Project STONE is an initiative that came about as a result of extensive research that my colleague Crystal Smith and myself would have conducted throughout our final year process that was last semester. So as we continue the research process, we were kind of alarmed at this silent epidemic on elder abuse. So as we proceeded and we continued our research process, we recognized that this was really, really an initiative that we needed to embark on to really create awareness through this program.
How did you go about finding out about elder abuse?
Okay, we would have done research extensively. Crystal, she would have done research as far back as the the Asian population, and we looked at how persons revered their senior population, and then we compared it to Barbados and recognizing that there were some issues there that needed to be addressed. So that's how we came about this project.
If you were to put it on a scale, a percentage scale, what percentage of our elderly are finding themselves in abusive situations, do you think?
Well, according to PAHO, the research has shown that by the time we reach the year of 2050, or between 20 and 2050, there's going to be a very large population of 176% of elderly persons here in Barbados, and that is alarming amount of persons that came about as a result or will come about as a result of the baby booming. I don't know, Pearson, if you recall the baby booming stage in the 1960s when there were a lot of babies being had. So
you asked me if I remember? You make it sound as if I was alive. I'm just kidding you. Well, but we've heard of it, yeah. Our population, there was a surge in the population, yes. Go ahead.
Right, so as a result of that, we're expected to have, and this as research is according to PAHO and many other research, the census research and so on, that would have outlined, predicted that by the year 2050, and even coming even closer to that, research have also predicted that by year 2030, Barbados would have a very, 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 at least the largest amount of elderly persons in the Caribbean.
And so, Dr. Hasbus, this is where you come into play, because with that comes a whole host of other conditions and concerns, the standard of living, how we're cared for, and those kinds of things, and your study of gerontology. So talk to me a little bit about what you're discovering in your field of profession.
Well, Pearson, the role of a gerontologist you have to wear so many caps, because not only as a medical doctor, but also in terms of as you said, the social, the living standards, economic standards, and also the emotional well-being of the older ones must be taken into account. And one of the things that we tend not to talk about worldwide, and definitely not in the Caribbean, it's a hush-hush, is that of elder abuse. And that's what my topic is going to be today. It's an unfortunate one, but it's one that must be mentioned.
When we say abuse, immediately we think only of physical abuse, but there's much more to the definition of the word abuse. So break it down for me from your practice and your experience with the levels of abuse that come to your attention.
Well, that's right. So let's start first with a quick definition of abuse, and that's the harm that's caused to a person. As we know, an older person is age greater than 60 or 65, depending on where you live, and that may be intentional or unintentional. So, and it can occur in the home, family member's house, wherever the person is living, assisted care, nursing home. It's not just like a big facility. And we may consider it to be strangers, but it can unfortunately be family members, caregivers, providers. So it may not be intentional, they may just not know what to do. So the physical, we know, hitting, slapping, people might think about that, but there's emotional abuse. So yelling at the person, shouting, ignoring them is also a form of abuse. If they're calling for water and you're not handing that, for example. Financial abuse, persons may be familiar with, signing the checks and then you're taking the money. So there's financial exploitation or there's financial neglect. Then there's abandonment, either in the home, you just leave them to be, or you leave the house and leave them for the state to take care of. And that's abandonment. And then there's sexual abuse, either direct or forcing an older person to witness sexual acts. So those are the types of elder abuse.
Therese James, you're clearly doing something right in what you're doing at the University of the West Indies and inspiring these young people to get up and to do something about what they see. And as it relates to social work in particular, and to effect the change that they want to see happen in their communities as well. Let's talk about this from your perspective now, the care of our elderly as it relates to elder abuse, and what it is that you think still as a society we can do better so that they live more meaningful lives in their older ages.
Yeah, good morning, Pearson, again. Well, first of all, the issue of elder abuse, as Lana has said, is a taboo area. It is not well known of. And that is because it is unreported most of the times. And the challenge with the reporting is that the elderly that are abused may tell, for example, NAB has caregivers that go into the home health, they call them. And they may, for example, hear cases from the elderly person themselves that they're being abused in whatever angle that Dana had talked about. And when they say, well, let us take this out further to the police, let's call the police, etc., the elderly persons will typically say, no, I don't want persons to know to me. And the challenge lies because there is no legislation around elder abuse in Barbados. So there is no reporting of it, one. And then if persons do decide to report, the challenge is we do not have policy or legislation. We're waiting the National Policy on Aging to be reviewed and to be sorted out, which is a very good foundation for this to come under. And sorry, as I said, Pearson, that's one of our biggest challenges. When I looked at abuse of the elderly, the only clear indication of elder abuse, because as I said, it doesn't really necessarily go reported, is an example of leaving our elderly at the hospitals. Like, for example, QEH Hospital has a lot of elderly that are left there. And when I worked in the medical social department there many years ago, that was happening then when they were leaving the elderly persons on the actual floors of the ward and in the accident emergency department and literally dropping them off and leaving them. And then they had to be positioned or located at the geriatric hospital many times. That's a form of abuse. And I do not think, I don't believe that Barbadians understand that is an element of abuse. So you need to, first of all, educate the public of what is elder abuse. The same way how we educate what is child abuse. They need to know what is elder abuse. They need to be aware of that, to know when they see signs of it. Then we need to have it legislated. That is the most important aspect of the issue of elder abuse. There needs to be legislation so we can take the cases forward and persons could be prosecuted for abusing the elderly population. So, and again, as Lana said, one of the other areas of elder abuse that Barbados probably are aware of, apart from just the abandonment in the hospital, is also younger members of the family or individuals that the elderly person trust taking their money. And I'm sure Barbadians have heard of cases where a person would go into the bank, the ATM machine, and I've heard persons saying this, and the elderly person in front will say, or should I say the older person in front will say, where's my money? My money's gone. Money on the bank, and they'll be in a state. So these are serious issues. The ones of sexual, physical, and mental are also important, but those are normally behind closed doors, and those are the ones we want to also capture. So my students, they're really excited about the issue of elder abuse. As they did the research with me last semester, they realized that it really and truly is a silent area that is not being addressed.
Indeed. And for a lot of people, that's all right. For a lot of people, their money is their life. It's what you live doing and you lived for. And here it is, when it disappears, you feel as though your life also disappears. So Michelle, now that you've created this campaign, Stone, how is it going to play out and what responses from the public would you like to see so that it is as effective as you've dreamt it to be?
Yes, Pearson. So we're going to be having first our 3 objectives, and these objectives came about as a result as well. We reflected after the research process on 3 core values from the social work professional, which is the importance of human relationship, dignity and worth of the individual, and social justice. So we are seeking to educate the public, we are seeking to empower the caretakers, the relatives, the society on a whole, and we're seeking also to agitate to social justice. So we want to have these 6 seminars. There are 6 webinars that we will be conducting to a specific part of the population, which is the elderly, and we're also seeking to target the caregivers as well. So we have invited school of persons who are educated in that field. We have the gerontologists on board. We have a number of professions who work very, very close because we know we need to incorporate all of the systems if we're going to be effective and efficient in this endeavor.
So there's 6 webinars upcoming. So how can we find out more about it so that we position ourselves to be a part of it?
Well, a part of our advocacy process, we will be erecting banners, and we're targeting the Warrens area. We'll be erecting a banner there highlighting the forms of elder abuse, and we'll be also sharing our Zoom link to these webinars where we will have professionals there such as members from the Barbados Police Service. They'll be conducting the session speaking about the fraudulent activities that they would see in the community. We also have personnel from the NIS, the National Insurance Scheme, which will be speaking about pensions and managing your pensions and, you know, the financial aspects surrounding that. We also have an occupational therapist on board. She'll be speaking about caring, because we want to look at the holistic care of the elderly population. We have also a chronic disease specialist. She'll be looking at the health aspect and stuff like that. So it's going to be an exciting set of.
Well, it's your baby now, so you have to see it right through to full term, indeed. We have to leave it right there, though. But thank you so much, as always, for joining us, and great work coming out of the faculty there at the University of the West Indies. Michelle Williams, final year student. She's part of that Stone campaign. She, along with her colleague, Crystal Smith. Also, Therese James, so the lecturer, the guider, the teacher, the mother, the inspiration, the everything to these young students as well. And Dr. Lana Husbands, the gerontologist. I'd love to hear more about the study of gerontology and what else you're discovering as we go as well. So I'll get our producer to talk to you a little more closely, Dr. Husbands, so we pursue further on this subject. Great. But I want to wish you only the very best with this subject. We look forward from you, Therese James, a lot more of what's coming out of your faculty to share with the Barbadian public as well. Thank you so much, all. Good. Morning Barbados continues right after this. Get the book ready. This is where we're going next after this break.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
So here we are indeed on our manager's first aid kit, and of course with our favorite girl in the morning, Joan Underwood. Joan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Pearson. Good morning to all of Barbados on this rainy Wednesday morning.
Is it? Thanks for the weather update. I had no clue. Sitting here, I can't hear anything, so I don't know anything. But thank you for the weather update. Now, Joan, we started last week this big chapter, which is looking at building a high-performance team. And, you know, in all my excitement, I started talking about it, of course, with my colleagues. So right away, one of them says, you need to coach me. I said, no, you need to go get a book. You need to go get the book and read it for yourself. I'm not yet there to coach you. But nonetheless, you know, we started developing the team charter. So right away, we put it into practice already. And the team charter is as a guide. It's truly as a guide that guides the performance of the team. We all agreed, the agreed values upon which we're developing this team once we identify what they are. And so I want to move on to looking at some of those things that would cause that team to be dysfunctional. And how can we resolve those dysfunctions? So where can you take me where that's concerned? Because it is bound to happen, as we say.
Oh, absolutely. Even high-performing teams have to deal with these specific challenges. And what the model that I use is from Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of the Team. It's a best-selling book. fantastic book, easy read and life-changing when it comes to team dynamics. So as the name suggests, there are 5 dysfunctions. The first one, a lack of trust. If you don't have trust in your team, and Pearson, we've been talking about trust since we started this journey. If the members of the team don't trust each other, and this is not just about you as a leader, they need to trust you for sure, but there also needs to be trust within and between members of the team, or else you cannot be high performing. So that's the first one. And the thing is, it's like a downward slide with these dysfunctions. Because if you don't have that trust within the team, then people are going to be reluctant to engage in constructive conflict. Right? They're going to be reluctant to be vulnerable. And so if you have in your meetings, Pearson, and this reminds me of something that you shared last week, if in your meetings it's really quiet or everybody just seems to be agreeing, and you're assuming they're agreeing because they're quiet, that doesn't mean that you have genuine agreement. There may be a fear of engaging in conflict. Right? So you get this false impression that people are on board. However, because they're not genuinely on board, because they didn't engage in conflict, air their views, work it through, then they don't want to have a decision is taken. So like last week, when you told us about going into your meeting with your preconceived notions, and, either dragging or pushing the people to get to the point where you needed them to be. If they don't articulate a commitment, you may think, all right, we're good to go, we're moving forward. And then you notice, but hold on a second. People are not doing what I told them or what we agreed we were going to do. And what you have there, you then seek to hold them accountable. And they say, but we agreed. Remember, we had this meeting and we agreed. And if they feel brave enough, they say, we agreed. We remember you telling us something.
True.
But I don't know about the we agreed part. So they're not prepared to be held accountable to the decision because they weren't part of it. They never really committed to it. And then that brings us to the 5th dysfunction, the inattention to results. Because if I never committed, you can't hold me accountable. Therefore, you're not going to get the results that you need. And so you can't have a high-performing team. So lack of trust, all right, fear of conflict, the lack of commitment, the lack of accountability, and ultimately the inattention to results would be the primary dysfunctions.
So how do I get it to perform correctly? I mean, how do I get each of them to love each other? First of all, to trust each other. How do I get them to start there so that I have my high-performing team?
Okay, so we go back to the chapter we did in terms of managing others, where we looked at the building blocks of relationships. And Pearson, they don't have to love each other, they just need to respect each other. They need to have empathy for each other. They need to have open and effective communication. And they need to realize that people are not clones of them. So the platinum rule needs to be enforced as right? So trust has to be built. And remember, we had an entire chapter on trust. So you need to show up as being competent. You need to show up as being of good integrity. You need to show up as genuinely wishing your people well. And you need to be consistent with that. So it can't be a cloak, an outer garment that you put on and take off. It has to be authentic. It has to be genuine. And it has to be the meta competency consistently evident in how you show up.
Yeah, and again, time has always been right through all of this, folks. You can't rush the brush, as we would say, because then you'll spoil the art. So you have to develop the time, the sensitivity, and the patience for these things to build. Fear of conflict, I agree with you that oftentimes we sit there, we figure, well, as they're silent, clearly there's no contention. So, all seems to be well. And I don't want to touch on this subject because if I touch on it, I know it's going to trigger a nerve. And to avoid that, let's pretend it doesn't exist. But then there's some people in the group who say, no, we have to deal with the elephant in the room. And that meeting can become quite raucous and disruptive, can't it?
Absolutely. But here's where the charter comes in handy. Because in your charter, you would have stipulated how you deal with conflict, right? Because what type of team do we want to be? How do we want to engage each other? And so if you have that foundation in your charter and things start going off the rails, then you remind them, okay, folks, this is not how we decided we would engage each other. So let's remember our core values, let's remember our charters, and let's deal with this conflict in a way that's consistent with what our charter said, who our charter says that we are.
When I identify someone who shows a lack of commitment, do I just kick them off the team? Should I counsel them? Do I beg them to come back? Or do I just move on and pretend they don't exist?
All right, so it depends, as so many things do. Because if you have someone who has over a period of time shown that this is how they show up, then at some point you may want to say, okay, does this person fit the team? But at some point, that's not where you start out. Because remember, as the leader, it's your responsibility to meet people where they are and help them to get to where they need to be. So if the person is not committed, it requires you engaging them in order to ascertain what the impediment is. Because it may be something, and we have a way of holding on to some old hurts, and sometimes we're holding on to the thing for so long we can't even remember the specifics of the original incident, but we just know that we hurt and a time ago, and people here not nice, and if you think they're good, right? So it's important to help them to strip away some of that, to get back into the focus. And again, coming back to the team charter and your purpose. Is this a purpose that you support? Do you want to be a part of delivering on this purpose? If so, this is what is required of you. Can you step up to the plate and do this? Or do we need to start making some other decisions?
We're talking about shifting cultures, though, in all of this, because if the culture you walked in on was A, and you want now to shift it to B, then it's going to require a complete shift in the way we approach things, which is also where accountability falls into play, because oftentimes you'd hear it, that a lot of the reasons why a lot of our businesses fail is because there's been a little attention to accountability, holding people responsible for what they agree to be responsible for. And that is such one of those little wood ants that would get into the house, that would decay the house in a second if you don't pay attention.
Absolutely. And you mentioned culture.
Yeah.
And I want to make a slight detour to talk about culture here, because it's very easy for people in middle management, for frontline managers, to point to the culture as an excuse why things are not going the way that they should be or that they would like them to be. And I want to push back on that and challenge on that. Because culture doesn't exist just at one level. So you have the entire organizational culture. Let's refer to that as the macro culture. So CBC has a macro culture, which that's set above your pay grade, Pearson, okay?
Yes.
However, below that, you have what we can refer to as the subculture. So within departments, the leaders of those departments have the opportunity to set their culture by virtue of their leadership. So that's the subculture. And even at the next level down, within the individual teams within a department, you have the microculture, which again flows from the tone set by the leadership. So you mentioned in a previous episode that you have like 3 different radio stations that you're responsible for. So if we put all 3 together, you would have a subculture there across your stations, right? Based on how you show up as the leader. But then within each of those, there's a microculture, because there are leaders within each of those stations that their shadow helps to determine how the culture exists within there. So don't just say, within this organization, the culture is X. You as a leader, wherever you fall within that hierarchy, you influence your level of the culture.
Because then you lead us to cliques. There will be cliques that will form in these subcultures all the way down, and those cliques can be quite formidable, and you can't turn your eyes away from them. Those are some of the things that would disrupt any high-performing team.
Exactly. So we come back to the charter again. right? This is why, as you say, it takes time to do the work, but it's such important work because of the foresight that you need to anticipate the difficulties you're going to experience and plan for them. So yes, I mean, human nature, we gravitate towards certain people more than others, like me and you gel. I'm not saying that I feel the same way about everybody else, but the thing is, there's nothing wrong with having a special relationship with one or more persons as long as it doesn't have an adverse impact on how you engage with the others. Right? It's when the arrogance and the exclusivity start to creep in, when you start excluding people from what you're doing, that it can become problematic as it relates to the work. So if all you want to go movies, you know, in the days when you were going and you don't invite me, okay, I can get over that, but don't exclude me on the job. Don't exclude me when I am part of the work process.
Yes. John! The time is up. I cannot believe it. But listen, we have to move on. It's still in this chapter. Next week, we're going to look at team roles and responsibilities. Those are also a critical function of the best performing teams. So we'll look at that a little bit more detail again next week. But folks, such wonderful, wonderful gems in this book. I encourage you to get a copy from Day's Bookstore today. Go down to Day's Bookstore in town and get your copy. You can go online to utdsinc.com, utdsinc.com. You can go to Amazon and get a copy of the book. You'll see that it will work for you, whether you're in management, supervisory position, or at home as mommy or daddy. It really will work for you indeed. As always, Joan, thank you so much for joining us and inspiring my spirit to take on today in a new way as well. Thank you, Joan.
Thank you as well. Bye-bye.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye. Folks, that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us, as always, for my production crew of Nadia Foster, producer, and Ruel Ford, our technical director. Christopher Blemon is at sound, and Tamisha Green at master control. We thank you. We do look forward to seeing you again tomorrow, if it be God's will. Take care. Bye-bye.